I am confident that the Americans brought up the issue, and President Trump brought up the issue of the detained Canadians in China. We are very pleased that so many countries around the world, our allies and friends and others, have highlighted to China that the situation that these two Canadians find themselves in is unacceptable.
Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he was confident U.S. President Donald Trump raised the issue of two detained Canadians with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Saturday. American officials, however, have yet to confirm to CBC News that that is indeed the case. The two Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, have now been in Chinese custody for more than 200 days. So is Canada any closer to securing the release of Kovrig and Spavor and ending the ongoing dispute? Earlier, I spoke with Colin Robertson, a former Canadian diplomat who served in both the U.S. and Hong Kong. He is now the vice president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. I asked him about Trudeau's claim that he's, quote, confident that Trump brought up the detained Canadians in his meeting with China's president at the G20.
It would be better if the Prime Minister had said he was certain. Because with Donald Trump, you're just never sure. So I think, as you said at the outset, it would be, let's wait confirmation. And then we will feel better that the president did indeed raise it with Xi Jinping, which is important, because if the president raises it with President Xi, it has effect. We've had European leaders raise this, and the Chinese don't like that. They would rather that this was simply dealt with in their own fashion. So it's important that the president did so, but let's get confirmation that he did so.
After the Prime Minister held his news conference this afternoon, we emailed the American embassy here in Ottawa. We also reached out to the White House. We haven't heard anything back just yet, but I've got my phone here. So if we do get any sort of response from any American officials to confirm what the Prime Minister is confident about. But to get back to the point of this, Justin Trudeau said he too brought it up when he did cross paths with Xi Jinping at the G20. Is there anything that, are these conversations really going to be able to do anything to improve the relationship between Ottawa and Beijing right now?
Well, right now it's our hostages, so one Meng for two Michaels in a way, and that we have to sort that out, and that's where the Americans have the whip hand, because they're the ones who've requested the extradition of Meng Wanzhou, and we are proceeding with that because of the Prime Minister's declaration of respect for rule of law. But this is really something that the Americans could be more helpful to us on, and that's why it is important. It would be very important for the president to have raised that. After all, he got us into this fix, and that fix is, as you say, cost two Canadians 200 days of their life in pretty grueling conditions, and it's resulted in, as we know, embargo of our canola and harassment of other Canadian food products, meat and pork. And who knows what will be next, because I think the Chinese will continue to ratchet up the pressure. They don't understand that the rule of law means something in Canada. They think if they put enough pressure on us that we'll buckle.
And that sort of leads to my next question, that, you know, the Chinese have made it very clear. There is one thing they want here. They want Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou to be released. She, of course, was arrested in Canada at the request of the United States. Canada has made it clear that it is not going to interfere in the judicial process here. How do these two countries, how does Ottawa and how do Beijing, how do they move past this? Is there any way to move past this?
Yes, I think that there was an opportunity to send former Prime Minister Chrétien as a kind of special envoy. I think somehow we've got to open up a dialogue with the Chinese, because it would appear for now that the Chinese are not returning the calls of the Prime Minister. He may have had a passing conversation with President Xi, but Premier Li isn't responding to his call, nor is the Chinese Foreign Minister responding to the calls of Foreign Minister Freeland. So somehow we've got to get a dialogue going, but the Chinese, I think they can just stiff us for now. So I think it's probably about time for us to start taking some pokes back, because they've certainly been poking us. And I think there are some things we could do. There are 100,000 Chinese students studying in Canada. They regard Canada as an extremely favorable place to study. I think we start saying, okay, if you're the son or daughter of a senior official, we're going to slow that application down, or perhaps we're not going to move with it, because remember, people are going to come here for September. The president of Taiwan is going to be visiting the United States in a couple of weeks. Well, we've been debating a foreign investment protection agreement with Taiwan. We have a potentially major Canadian investment going into Taiwan around clean energy. Maybe we say to the president of Taiwan, why don't you stop by Canada? The the situation in Hong Kong. I think we have probably the biggest diaspora of Hong Kong citizens because of the flow of migration over the years, partly because people are very unhappy with what's going on in China. We perhaps put the spotlight on what's going on in Hong Kong. After all, the Prime Minister has said that we are a champion of human rights. It's what we're doing right now in Toronto around Ukraine and helping Ukraine move forward. Maybe we start taking a poke back differently than the Chinese. Not a trade issue, not trade, because I don't think the trade will hurt Canadians, but I think there are certain areas where we can poke back. There may be Chinese officials who are behaving badly in Canada, engaging in espionage. Well, maybe we pick up a couple.
Now, are you not concerned, though, if the government did start to poke back, whether it is, slowing down applications of children of Chinese officials or picking up, diplomats who might be or officials who might be spying in Canada? Are you not concerned that that would only inflame tensions further and cause even more retaliation from China?
Well, right now, whatever we've been doing is not working. Perhaps the United States has been helpful, but as you say, it's been 200 days and there has been no progress. Rather, we seem to be on the losing end of Chinese initiatives, including, as I say, embargoing our foodstuffs and continuing to slap us about.
There's one other thing I want to bring up. Mary Ng, I want to show you a tweet from Mary Ng. She is the Minister of Small Business and Export Promotion. She, along with the government leader in the Senate, Peter Harder, by the way, I should mention, has an extensive background in Canada-China relations. They're both in Beijing right now, and I'm going to bring up this tweet, and she's promoting Canadian businesses. It says, when in Beijing, you drop by Cow's Ice Cream, a true Canadian small business success story from Prince Edward Island. The world needs more of all great things Canada has to offer, ice cream included, and that's why I am dedicated to helping small, medium enterprises start up, scale up, and access new markets. However, she's there, and the tweet also has some photographs of her sitting down with Peter Harder, having some ice cream in Beijing. Given the tensions that are hanging over everything in this relationship right now, is it really appropriate for Canada to go there and try to deepen business ties when Canada is trying to get its two citizens released?
Yes, because we still have to do business. Remember, the relationship is multifaceted, and I think having Peter Harder over there, as you point out, former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, he was head of the Canada-China Business Council for many years before going to the Senate. He has the kind of place that the Chinese will respect. Mary Ng, given her heritage, so it would not surprise me that there are conversations going on between Peter Harder and Minister Ng with Chinese officials to sort of see if we can't find some way out. So I think it is useful for us to continue to try to do business with China. After all, we still want to sell our goods to China, but at the same time, I think it would not surprise me to see Peter Harder, given that he was a skilled diplomat, having discussions with Chinese counterparts, because he would be viewed as kind of an old friend.
All right, Colin Robertson, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Last hour, I spoke with the Power panel about the Prime Minister saying he was confident that Donald Trump raised the issue of the detained Canadians in his meeting with the Chinese president. Here is what Tiffany Gooch, Rachel Curran, and Françoise Boivin made of Trudeau's choice of words.
Confidence is the best that you can have when you weren't in the room and you can't say for certain exactly what was said, but you've been told by those around and throughout that it was intended to be done and that it was. So I think that this is one of those times when language is something that the PM does need to be careful around to make sure that he's not necessarily put words in somebody else's mouth. It is something that I think the White House needs to be able to answer to as well, or those that were in the room.
And after the Prime Minister held his news conference today, I sent an email to the U.S. Embassy here in Ottawa, as well as to the White House. I haven't heard anything back. My email just went up. No, I'm checking just in case there is some sort of direct confirmation that, yes, it happened. Rachel, when you heard the word confident, did that stand out to you? What do you make of that?
Well, I read it as like it actually happened. To be honest, I thought he probably wouldn't use the word confident unless he was actually confident, because you don't want to use that kind of word if it's going to blow back on you, if you're going to be not so confident in a day or two after making that statement. So I think there is probably a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I think there's probably a fairly decent chance that Trump did mention it in some context if what we're hearing is accurate. But, how hard did he really press? How much did he really lobby? Probably not much. If he raised it at all, it was probably a pretty pro forma interaction, at best. So, I mean, look, there's not much progress that's being made. Clearly, there's work going on behind the scenes, but it's not enough, and we're still stuck. We're stuck exactly where we were, 6 months ago. So more needs to be done. I think more can be done, and more should be done.
Françoise, when you hear that the Prime Minister is saying, okay, he's confident that Trump brought it up, when the Prime Minister went to Washington just before the G20 to get that public assurance, to get that, public statement to say, yes, Donald Trump would do anything to help Canada in this situation, people were holding their breath and crossing their fingers that Donald Trump did follow through on that. What does that say about the general Canada, the state of the Canada-U.S. relationship when Canada's closest ally, when there's such uncertainty about whether Canada's closest ally will actually follow up on what it says it's going to do?
Well, first of all, we have to realize that it's been a bumpy road for the last year, from Charlevoix to Osaka. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in between. So we went from being in the doghouse to maybe becoming again friends again. So it's not as simple as that. The problem is, in my point of view, is when you depend on somebody to do your job, you live with the consequences. And especially when you depend on something that was not that clear to me, even if the President Trump said he would raise the issue with President Jinping, at the same time I had my doubts because it seemed kind of last second. And we know how Donald Trump has many ideas in one day. So while he's saying this, something can happen later that will trump, excuse the expression, the previous one. So that might be the problem. Contrary to my colleagues, I don't believe in the word confident. For me, doesn't mean that he's sure. It's shutting down media, saying, I'm confident he did because I'll take the president to his word. But right now, the White House, the Canadian government, nobody can say with certainty that something happened on the issue. It's very easy to say, I do believe that it happened. I don't have the details, but I was assured that it happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm confident. Well, I'm confident about a lot of things that will never happen in my life. And that's that. So.
That was my earlier conversation with the Power Panel, Tiffany Gooch, Rachel Curran, and Françoise Boivin.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.